The bridge of the UES Liberty was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Admiral Jake Morrison stood looking out at the stars through the main window. He had been in space for 20 years, but the view still made him feel small. Earth was just a tiny blue dot behind them now. "Admiral, we're getting something strange on the long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Pete Collins from his station. His voice was tight with worry. Jake walked over to look at the screen. 3 massive shapes were moving toward their solar system. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship was the size of a small city. "How long until they reach Earth?" Jake asked. "At their current speed, about 6 hours," Pete answered. Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was what every human had wondered about for years. Were they alone in the universe? Now they had their answer, and it was heading straight for them. Captain Lisa Parker was in her lab when the alert came through the ship's speakers. She was Earth's top expert on alien life, though until today that had been mostly theory. She grabbed her tablet and ran to the bridge. "What do we know about them?" she asked Jake as soon as she arrived. "Not much. They're big, they're fast, and they're coming here," he said. "I need you to help us figure out how to talk to them." Lisa looked at the sensor readings. The ships were unlike anything in human design. They were smooth and curved, almost like giant teardrops made of metal and crystal. Strange energy readings came from them that their computers couldn't identify. "Have they tried to communicate?" she asked. "Not yet," said Jake, but we're ready to receive any signals." On the alien flagship, Fleet Commander Zeth stood in his command center. The crystal spikes that covered his tall body glowed with a soft blue light. His species, the Vorthak, had conquered 47 star systems over the past 300 years. This would be number 48. "Report on the primitive world," he said to his science officer. "They call it Earth. The inhabitants are a young species called humans. They have basic space travel, but nothing that can threaten us," came the reply. Zeth nodded. It was always the same. Young species looked at their ships and immediately surrendered. Some tried to fight with their primitive weapons, but that never lasted long. Most just begged for mercy. "Send the standard surrender message," he ordered. Back on the Liberty, the communications officer suddenly sat up straight. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's in English." "Put it through the main speakers," Jake said. A voice filled the bridge. It was clearly not human, speaking with strange clicks and hums mixed in with the words. "Attention, primitive species of the 3rd planet. I am Fleet Commander Zeth of the Galactic Federation. Your world is now under our control. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist and suffer. You have one of your hours to comply." The bridge went silent. Everyone looked at Jake, waiting for his response. Lisa stepped forward. "Admiral, I request permission to respond." Jake looked surprised. "What do you want to say?" "I want to ask them questions about their technology, their culture, where they come from. This is the greatest discovery in human history." Jake stared at her. "Lisa, they just threatened to kill us all." "I know, but think about what we could learn. We've dreamed of this moment for centuries." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Davis was monitoring all communication channels. He had been a signals expert for 15 years and had never heard anything like this. The alien transmission used technologies that shouldn't be possible with their understanding of physics. "Admiral, I'm picking up more signals from their ships. They're scanning our entire solar system. And sir, they're also scanning us right now." On the alien ship, Zeth was getting reports from his officers. This was taking longer than usual. Most species responded within minutes, either surrendering or attacking with their pathetic weapons. "Why haven't they responded?" he asked. His communication officer looked confused. "Sir, they're sending us messages, but they're not surrender offers." "What are they saying?" "They want to know about our propulsion systems, our energy sources, and our home worlds. They're asking if we want to establish trade relationships." Zeth felt something he rarely experienced: confusion. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever responded this way. Are they insane? Do they not understand that we're about to destroy them? "I don't think they care, sir. They seem more interested in learning about us than in our threats." Back on the Liberty, Lisa was working frantically at her station. She had sent dozens of questions to the alien fleet. She wanted to know everything about them. "Admiral, look at this," she said excitedly. "I've been analyzing their ship designs. The way they bend space around them for faster travel is incredible. If we could understand even a small part of it, we could explore the entire galaxy." Jake shook his head. "Lisa, they're here to conquer us, not teach us." "But maybe they don't have to be," she said. "What if we can show them that humans are worth talking to instead of just destroying?" Ryan looked up from his station. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from Earth. Every major government is asking what our response will be. Some want to surrender immediately, others want to fight." Jake thought about the choice in front of him. Surrender meant slavery or death for his entire species. Fighting meant almost certain defeat against ships they couldn't possibly damage. But Lisa's approach was something else entirely. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," he said. "Admiral Morrison, to Fleet Commander Zeth," Jake said into his microphone. "We've received your message. We'd like to invite a small group of your people aboard our ship to discuss terms." On the alien flagship, Zeth's officers looked shocked. "Sir, they want to negotiate," his communication officer reported. "Impossible. Young species don't negotiate. They surrender or they die." But something about this situation felt different. The humans weren't acting like any species he had encountered before. They showed no fear. Instead, they seemed curious about the Vorthak technology and culture. "Sir, what should we tell them?" asked his second-in-command. Zeth thought for a moment. His orders were to secure the surrender of any species they encountered. These humans were clearly not surrendering, but they also weren't attacking. This was new territory. "Tell them we will send a small diplomatic team, but warn them that any tricks will result in the immediate destruction of their world." When Jake heard this response, he felt a mix of relief and terror. They had bought some time, but now they had to figure out what to do with it. "Lisa, you'll lead our diplomatic team. Take Dr. Martinez from Linguistics and Commander Bell from Security." "What's our goal?" Lisa asked. Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there was a whole galaxy full of species they had never imagined. These aliens had the power to destroy Earth, but they also had knowledge that could change everything for humanity. "Learn everything you can," he said, "and try to convince them that humans are worth keeping alive." As the two ships prepared for the first meeting between humans and aliens, neither species knew that this encounter would change the galaxy forever. The Vorthak expected another easy conquest. The humans expected to learn about the universe. Neither side was prepared for what would actually happen when two completely different ways of thinking about fear and survival met for the first time. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything both species thought. They knew about power, courage, and what it meant to be afraid. 3 months had passed since the Vorthak ships arrived in Earth's orbit. The first diplomatic meeting had not gone as either side expected. The aliens were frustrated that humans kept asking questions about their technology instead of begging for mercy. The humans were disappointed that the aliens seemed more interested in control than in sharing knowledge. Now massive Vorthak ships hung in the sky above every major city on Earth. Their crystal hulls caught the sunlight and threw rainbow patterns across the ground below. At first, people had been terrified. But as weeks passed, something strange happened. Humans began to adapt. Governor Helen Brooks sat in her underground office in what used to be the New York City Hall. The Vorthak had taken over all government buildings, but Helen had simply moved her operations to the subway tunnels. She was meeting with resistance leaders from around the world through hidden communication networks. "Report from London," said a voice through her encrypted radio. "The aliens tried to shut down our food distribution yesterday. We rerouted everything through the old sewer systems. Nobody went hungry." "Chicago here," came another voice. "They're demanding we work in their mining operations. We're going, but we're also learning how their equipment works. Give us another month and we'll know as much about their machines as they do." Helen smiled grimly. The Vorthak had expected Earth's population to collapse into despair within days. Instead, humans were treating the occupation like a puzzle to solve. Every restriction the aliens imposed just made people more creative about getting around it. Infov, a hidden workshop beneath Los Angeles. Sergeant Amy Johnson was working on something that would have seemed impossible 4 months ago. She was taking apart a Vorthak reconnaissance drone with nothing but human tools. "Hand me the smaller wrench," she said to her assistant, a teenager named Bobby who had volunteered to help the resistance. "Sergeant, how do you know which wires to cut?" Bobby asked. "Their technology is supposed to be thousands of years ahead of ours." Amy looked up from her work. She had grease on her face and her hands were scratched from handling the alien materials. "That's what they want us to think. But look at this circuit board. It's complex, sure, but it follows the same basic principles as our electronics. They just made it fancier." She pointed to a cluster of crystal components. "See this? It's their version of a processor. It's fast, but it's doing the same job as the chips in our computers. Once you understand that, the rest starts to make sense." Amy had been an electronics technician in the Army before the invasion. Now she was leading a team of 12 people who were reverse engineering alien technology. They had already figured out how the Vorthak power cells worked and had built their own versions using Earth materials. "The trick is not to be intimidated," Amy continued. "They want us to think their stuff is magic, but it's just science we haven't learned yet." Dr. Kevin Stone was having similar thoughts as he worked in his makeshift clinic in what used to be Denver. The Vorthak had tried every psychological pressure technique in their arsenal to break human resistance. They showed videos of destroyed planets. They separated families. They cut off supplies to entire cities. According to every model in their databases, humans should have surrendered weeks ago. Instead, Kevin was documenting something remarkable in his hidden research notes. "Subject shows typical human adaptation pattern," he dictated quietly into his recorder. "When faced with family separation, subject organized neighborhood support network. When denied food, subject learned to grow vegetables in hidden locations. When threatened with violence, subject became more determined to resist rather than more afraid." Kevin had been studying trauma and stress for 20 years. He had never seen anything like what was happening to humanity under the Vorthak occupation. Where other species would break down, humans were actually getting stronger. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He hid his recording equipment and opened it to find Maria Santos, a teacher who had been helping organize the local resistance. "So, Dr. Stone, we need your help," she said. "The aliens are trying a new tactic. They're broadcasting messages that are supposed to make us depressed and hopeless, but people are just getting angry instead." Kevin nodded. He had heard about this. The Vorthak were using psychological warfare techniques that had worked on dozens of other species. But human brains seemed to respond differently. "Let me ask you something, Maria. When you hear those broadcasts, what do you think about?" She considered the question. "I think about my students. Before the invasion, I taught 3rd grade. Those kids were so curious about everything. They'd ask a million questions about how things work. When I hear the aliens telling us to give up, I just think about how disappointed those kids would be if we stopped trying to figure out how to beat this." Kevin made a mental note. It was the same pattern he saw everywhere. Humans didn't just endure hardship. They used it as motivation to solve problems. Commander Greg Miller was coordinating with resistance movements from his base in the mountains outside Seattle. He had been an Air Force pilot before the invasion and had expected the resistance to be a military operation. Instead, it was something much more interesting. "Greg, this is Carlos in Mexico City," came a voice over the radio. "You need to hear what happened here yesterday." "Go ahead, Carlos. The aliens demanded that we stop teaching children about science and history. They want us to only teach them about Vorthak culture and how to serve the occupation." Greg felt his anger rise. "What did you do?" "We moved the schools underground. But here's the thing. The kids are more excited about learning than ever. They see education as an act of rebellion now. We've got 8-year-olds asking to learn advanced mathematics so they can help understand alien technology." "That's incredible," Greg said. "It gets better. The aliens don't understand why their standard education control isn't working. On every other world they've conquered, cutting off education made the population easier to control. But human children are treating it like a game. They're learning faster and working harder because someone told them they couldn't." Greg leaned back in his chair. The reports were the same from everywhere. Humans were responding to oppression in ways that the Vorthak couldn't understand or predict. His radio crackled again. "Greg, this is Captain Martinez in Houston. We just intercepted alien communications. They're asking their homeworld for advice on how to handle a species that won't break under pressure." "What kind of advice?" "That's just it. Their homeworld doesn't have any. In 300 years of conquest, they've never encountered anything like this. Every other species either surrendered immediately or fought a conventional war and lost. We're doing something completely different." Greg thought about that. Humans weren't just fighting the aliens. They were learning from them, adapting to them, and finding ways to turn every challenge into an opportunity. In orbit above Earth, Fleet Commander Zeth was having the worst 3 months of his military career. His crystal spikes had lost their blue glow and now flickered with frustrated red light. "Report," he demanded from his science officer. "Sir, our psychological pressure campaigns have completely failed. Instead of breaking the humans' will to resist, we seem to be making them more organized and more determined. How is that possible?" "We don't know, sir. Our experts have studied the data from 47 previous conquests. This response pattern doesn't exist in any of our files." Zeth moved to the large viewing screen that showed Earth below. He could see the lights of human cities still shining brightly despite months of occupation. On any other world, those lights would have dimmed or gone out entirely by now. What about our demands for tribute and forced labor? The humans comply, but they're using the work assignments to learn about our technology. Our mining operations are more efficient than ever, but that's because the human workers have figured out better ways to operate our equipment than our own people knew. And the forced construction projects? Sir, they're building what we ordered, but they're also studying our engineering principles. Our intelligence suggests they're applying what they learned to improve their own hidden facilities. Zeth felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service. He was losing control of a conquest not through military defeat, but through the complete failure of psychological dominance. "Sir," his communication officer interrupted. "We're receiving another message from the human Admiral Morrison." "What does he want now?" "He's requesting permission to send a cultural exchange team to our ship. He says humans are very interested in learning about Vorthak art and philosophy." Zeth stared at the message. Even now, facing occupation and oppression, these creatures wanted to learn about their conquerors rather than simply submit to them. "Sir, how should we respond?" Zeth realized he had no idea. Nothing in his training had prepared him for a species that treated conquest as an educational opportunity. On Earth, the resistance continued to grow stronger each day. Humans were discovering that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their inability to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. Every challenge the aliens presented was just another puzzle to figure out. 6 months into the occupation, Colonel Nina Foster was making a discovery that would change everything. She had been studying blood samples from resistance fighters in her hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of Chicago Medical Center. What she found made her call an emergency meeting with the other resistance leaders. "Look at these test results," she said, pointing to data on her computer screen. "When humans are under extreme stress, our bodies produce chemicals that actually make us think faster and learn quicker." Dr. Kevin Stone leaned forward to examine the data. "You're saying that fear makes us smarter?" "Not just smarter, more creative, more willing to take risks. Other species have stress responses that make them want to hide or give up. But human stress makes us want to solve problems and fight back." Nina had been a military doctor before the invasion. She had seen soldiers perform incredible feats under pressure, but she never understood the science behind it until now. The Vorthak occupation had given her the perfect laboratory to study human reactions to extreme stress. "There's more," she continued. "I've been comparing our brain scans to the alien data they've shared about other species. Human brains are different. When we're threatened, the parts that control creativity and problem-solving actually get more active, not less. This explained why the resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. Every time the aliens increased pressure on humanity, they were actually making humans more dangerous." Meanwhile, in a hidden workshop built inside an abandoned subway tunnel, engineer Sam Carter was proving Nina's theory correct. He was working on the biggest prize the Resistance had ever captured, an entire Vorthak patrol ship. The ship had been damaged during a routine scan of Earth's ocean and had crashed into the Pacific. Before the aliens could recover it, a team of human divers had secretly towed it to an underwater cave. Now Sam and his team were taking it apart piece by piece. "The power source is incredible," Sam explained to his assistant, a former NASA engineer named Julie. "It's like a tiny star contained in a crystal matrix, but look at this. They're not using it efficiently at all." Sam pointed to the alien engine design. "They built this thing to last forever and to never break down. But that makes it heavy and slow to respond. If we rebuilt it with human engineering principles, we could make it twice as powerful and half the size." Julie looked skeptical. "Sam, these aliens have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. You really think we can improve their design in a few months?" "That's exactly what I think," Sam said confidently. "They're so focused on making everything perfect that they never learn to make things better. Humans are good at taking something that works and making it work differently." Over the next few weeks, Sam's team did something the Vorthak had never seen before. They took alien technology and redesigned it using human thinking. The result was a hybrid ship that combined the best of both species' engineering. The ship was smaller than the original but faster and more maneuverable. It could carry the same weapons but used half the power. Most importantly, it was designed to be repaired and modified by humans instead of requiring specialized alien knowledge. Commander Luke Hayes was the pilot chosen to test the rebuilt ship. He had been an Air Force test pilot before the invasion and was used to flying experimental aircraft. But this was different. This was humanity's first step toward becoming a spacefaring species. "Control, this is Phoenix 1, he said into his radio as he prepared for the first test flight. "All systems are green. Beginning takeoff sequence." The ship lifted off from the hidden underground hangar and rose through a carefully concealed shaft that opened in the middle of a forest. Within minutes, Luke was flying through Earth's atmosphere in a vessel that was part alien technology and part human ingenuity. "Phoenix 1, how does it handle?" asked Sam's voice through the radio. "Like a dream," Luke replied. "It's more responsive than any aircraft I've ever flown. The alien technology provides the power, but the human modifications make it feel alive." Luke pushed the ship higher, testing its limits. He was amazed at how natural it felt to fly something that had been built by two completely different species, working together. "Control, I'm going to test the weapon systems," he announced. "Negative, Phoenix 1. We don't want to attract attention from the orbital ships." "Understood. But I want to test them on that old satellite we marked for target. Practice." Luke aimed the ship's weapons at a dead communications satellite that had been floating in orbit for years. He fired a short burst from the hybrid weapon system that Sam's team had designed. The satellite disappeared in a brief flash of light. "Control, target destroyed. These weapons are more powerful than anything in the alien arsenal." What Luke didn't know was that his test shot had been detected by the Vorthak orbital fleet. For the first time since arriving at Earth, their sensors had picked up an energy signature they didn't recognize. On the alien flagship, Fleet Commander Zeth was studying the sensor data with growing concern. "Are you certain this reading is correct?" he asked his science officer. "Yes, sir. The energy signature matches no known human technology, but it's also not consistent with our own weapons." "Could it be another species?" "Negative, sir. The signature originated from Earth's surface and the vessel appears to be of human origin, but using modified versions of our technology." Zeth felt his crystal spikes flicker with alarm. This was impossible. Primitive species didn't modify Vorthak technology. They barely understood how to use it, let alone improve it. How could they have obtained our technology to modify? His intelligence officer checked his reports. "Sir, we lost a patrol ship 6 months ago. It was reported as destroyed in the ocean, but we never recovered the wreckage." "They took it," Zeth realized. "They took our ship, and they've been studying it. This was unprecedented in the history of the Galactic Federation. Conquered species sometimes tried to steal alien technology, but they were never able to understand it well enough to use it effectively. The idea that humans had not only figured out Vorthak technology but had improved upon it was beyond anything in his experience. Back on Earth, Dr. Emma Walsh was making discoveries that would have terrified the aliens if they had known about them. She was an evolutionary biologist who had been studying how humans had survived and thrived on a planet that seemed designed to kill them. "Think about it," she explained to a group of resistance leaders gathered in her underground laboratory. "Earth is a death trap compared to most habitable worlds. We have predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather, and food shortages. Any species that evolved here had to become incredibly good at surviving impossible situations." Showed them data she had collected about other species in the galaxy. "Look at the Vorthak homeworld. Perfect climate, no dangerous animals, abundant resources. They evolved to be efficient and organized, but they never learned to adapt to threats they hadn't seen before." "And humans?" asked Governor Helen Brooks. "Humans evolved to expect that everything was trying to kill us," Emma said. "We developed the ability to think our way out of any situation, no matter how hopeless it seemed. Fear doesn't paralyze us. It makes us creative." Emma's research explained why human resistance was so effective. The Vorthak had evolved on a world where survival meant following established patterns and avoiding risks. Humans had evolved on a world where survival meant constantly adapting and taking calculated risks. The aliens use fear as a weapon because it works on every other species they've encountered, Emma continued. But for humans, fear is just information. It tells us there's a problem that needs to be solved. This difference in evolutionary background meant that every tactic the Vorthak used to control other species actually made humans more dangerous. Cutting off resources made humans more creative about finding alternatives. Separating families made humans better at building new communities. Threatening violence made humans better at preparing for war. The resistance was growing stronger every day, not in spite of alien pressure, but because of it. Human settlements that had been struggling to survive were now thriving underground. Human technology that had been primitive was now advancing at incredible speed thanks to access to alien science. Most importantly, humans were beginning to think beyond just surviving the occupation. They were starting to plan for what came next. Commander Greg Miller was coordinating a meeting of resistance leaders from around the world. For the first time since the invasion began, they were discussing offensive operations instead of just defensive ones. "We have 17 hybrid ships now," he reported. "Sam's team has figured out how to build them faster and better than before. We could have 50 within 6 months. "What about weapons?" asked Captain Martinez from Houston. "Better than the aliens have," Luke Hayes answered. "The hybrid designs are more powerful and more flexible than pure Vorthak technology." "Personnel? Every day more people are volunteering," said Helen Brooks. "They're not just angry anymore. They're confident. They believe we can win." Greg looked around the room at the other leaders. 6 months ago they had been fighting just to survive. Now they were planning to take back their planet. "The aliens made a mistake," he said. "They thought that being more advanced meant they were superior. But advancement and superiority are two different things." Major Tony Clark floated in zero gravity inside the captured Vorthak command ship. He had been a Navy SEAL before the invasion, trained for underwater and land combat. Now he was learning to fight in space, and the aliens were about to discover that humans were just as dangerous in 3 dimensions as they were on the ground. "Team 2 report," he whispered into his helmet radio. "In position at the engine room," came the reply from Sergeant Lisa Martinez. "Team 3, ready at the bridge," answered Corporal Danny Williams. Tony's team had spent weeks planning this raid. The Vorthak command ship contained the control systems for the entire orbital fleet. If they could capture it, they could cripple the alien. Operations around Earth. The aliens had made a mistake. They thought that humans needed gravity to fight effectively. They had never seen a species that could adapt to zero-gravity combat as quickly as humans did. "Remember, we want prisoners for intelligence," Tony said. "But don't take any unnecessary risks. These aliens are bigger and stronger than us." "But slower," added Lisa. "They're not used to fighting in zero gravity either." Tony smiled grimly. The aliens had evolved on a world with heavy gravity. In space, their large bodies made them clumsy. Humans who had evolved to be adaptable learned to move in zero gravity like fish in water. "Execute," Tony ordered. The 3 teams moved through the alien ship simultaneously. They had studied the layout from the patrol ship they had captured months earlier. Vorthak ships all followed the same basic design, which made them predictable. The Packard aliens were caught completely off guard. Their security systems were designed to detect large groups of armed soldiers, not small teams of humans who moved like ghosts through the ship's corridors. Tony's team reached the command center first. The Vorthak officers were floating at their stations, their crystal spikes glowing as they monitored Earth's surface. They turned in surprise as the humans burst through the doors. "Nobody move," Tony shouted, though he doubted the aliens understood English. It didn't matter. The aliens understood the weapons pointed at them well enough. The raid was over in less than 10 minutes. The humans had captured the entire command crew without firing a shot. More importantly, they now had access to the ship's computer systems and communication networks. While Tony's team was capturing the command ship, Director Karen Young was coordinating a much larger operation from her hidden base in the Rocky Mountains. She had been a diplomat before the invasion, and now she was using those skills to organize something that had never happened before in galactic history. "Status report from the Centauri system," she said into her communication array. "This is Rebellion Leader Kent from Centauri Prime," came a voice through the static. "We've received your instructions. The humans were right. The Federation forces here use the same tactics they used on your world." Karen smiled. 3 months ago, they had made contact with other species under Federation control. The humans had shared their resistance techniques, and the results were spreading across the galaxy. "What's your situation?" Karen asked. "We followed the human model. Instead of fighting the Federation directly, we started learning from them. Now we understand their technology better than they do. We're ready to begin active resistance." "Excellent. Remember, the key is to make them think their own tactics are failing, not that you're using new ones." Karen had discovered something important about the Galactic Federation. They had conquered so many worlds using the same methods that they had never learned to adapt. When those methods failed, they didn't know what to do next. The human approach was different. Instead of trying to defeat the aliens with superior force, they had shown other species how to turn the Federation's own strength against them. "Director Young, this is Captain Rodriguez from the Mars colony," came another voice over the radio. "Go ahead, Captain. We just received word from the Jupiter mining stations. The Federation forces there are reporting equipment failures and worker efficiency problems. Sound familiar?" Karen laughed. "Let me guess. The workers are asking too many questions about the technology and accidentally making it work better?" "Exactly. The Federation supervisors are completely confused. They're asking Earth Command for advice on how to handle species that won't follow standard behavior patterns." This was the human strategy in action. They weren't just resisting the Federation, they were teaching the entire galaxy that resistance was possible. Captain Chris Baker was proving this point as he commanded the bridge of the Defiance, formerly a Vorthak patrol ship. His crew was entirely human, and they had turned the alien vessel into something completely new. "Engineering report," Chris said. "Captain, the hybrid power system is running at 120% efficiency," came the reply from Chief Engineer Patricia Lopez. "The aliens never figured out how to use their own technology this effectively. Weapons, all systems modified and improved. We've got twice the firepower of the original design." Chris looked at his crew. 6 months ago, none of them had ever seen alien technology. Now they were operating it better than the aliens who had built it. "Sir, we're receiving a distress call from the lunar base," reported Lieutenant Brad Chen from the communication station. "Put it through. This is Colonel Stevens at Luna Base. We've got 3 Vorthak ships moving in to attack. Request immediate assistance." Chris made a decision that would have been impossible a year ago. "All hands prepare for combat. We're going to defend our people." The Defiance accelerated toward the moon, its hybrid engines pushing it faster than any pure Vorthak ship could travel. Chris's crew worked with efficiency that amazed even themselves. "Targeting the lead ship," announced Lieutenant Susan Park from the weapons station. "Fire when ready." The Defiance's modified weapons hit the alien ship with devastating effect. The Vorthak shields, designed to defend against their own technology, We're completely unprepared for weapons that used alien power sources with human tactical thinking. Direct hit. Enemy ship is withdrawing. Target the second ship. Within minutes, all 3 Vorthak ships were either destroyed or retreating. The human crew had won their first space battle against ships identical to their own. "Well done, everyone," Chris announced to his crew. But this is just the beginning. He was right. Intelligence Officer Lisa Martinez had been monitoring Federation communications from her station aboard the Defiance. What she was learning would change everything. "Captain, you need to hear this," she said, playing back intercepted alien transmissions. The voice of Fleet Commander Zeth filled the bridge. "Federation, Command, we are facing an unprecedented situation. The humans have not only resisted our standard occupation protocols, but they have somehow managed to improve our own technology." Another voice responded. "Explain." "They have captured and modified our ships. Their versions are more effective than our originals. They have also made contact with other species under our control and are teaching them resistance techniques. This is impossible. No primitive species has ever accomplished such things. Command, I don't think these humans are primitive. I think we've made a serious mistake." Lisa looked at Captain Baker with excitement. "Sir, they're scared. For the first time in 300 years, the Federation doesn't know what to do." Chris nodded thoughtfully. "What else are they saying?" "They're reporting that our resistance techniques are spreading to other worlds. Species that have been under Federation control for decades are starting to rebel. The entire system is beginning to break down." This was exactly what the human leadership had hoped for. They hadn't just fought back against their own occupiers. They had shown the entire galaxy that the Federation could be resisted. On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison was receiving similar reports from resistance cells around the world. The tide was turning, but not in the way anyone had expected. "Admiral, we've got confirmation from 17 different star systems," reported Commander Pete Collins. "Species that have been under Federation control are using human resistance techniques and achieving similar results." "How is the Federation responding?" "That's the interesting part, sir. They're not adapting. They keep trying the same tactics that have worked for 3 centuries, even though those tactics are now failing everywhere." Jake thought about this. The Federation had become so dependent on their standard approach that they couldn't change when it stopped working. They were like a hammer that only knew how to hit nails even when they were facing screws. What about their military response? They're sending more ships to the rebellious systems, but that's just making things worse. The more pressure they apply, the stronger the resistance becomes. It's the same pattern we saw here on Earth. Jake realized something important. The Federation had conquered the galaxy not through superior fighting ability, but through psychological dominance. Once that dominance was broken, their entire system began to fall apart. "Sir, incoming transmission from Fleet Commander Zeth," announced the communications officer. "Put him through." Zeth's voice filled the command center. "Admiral Morrison, I request a meeting to discuss terms." Jake felt a moment of satisfaction. 6 months ago, the aliens had demanded humanity's surrender. Now they were asking for negotiations. "What kind of terms?" Jake asked. "Mutual cooperation. The Federation is willing to offer humanity a place in our organization as equals." Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the newly constructed UES Freedom, humanity's first starship built from scratch using hybrid human-alien technology. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the massive Vorthak fleet that had once seemed so threatening. Now they hung in space like monuments to an old way of thinking. "Admiral, all human ships are in position," reported Commander Pete Collins. "The Defiance, Liberation, and Phoenix squadrons are ready for the final assault." Jake nodded, but his mind was on something else. This wasn't going to be a battle in the traditional sense. The war had already been won, not through superior firepower, but through a completely different understanding of what victory meant. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Fleet Commander Zeth," announced Lieutenant Sandra Kim from the communications station. "Put him through." Zeth's image appeared on the main screen. His crystal spikes had lost their blue glow entirely, and now, flickered with what Jake had learned was the Vorthak equivalent of exhaustion. "Admiral Morrison, I request immediate ceasefire negotiations." The Federation Council has authorized me to discuss full withdrawal from Earth. Jake studied the alien commander. 8 months ago, Zeth had arrived expecting routine conquest. Now, he looked like someone who had watched his entire worldview collapse. Commander Zeth, before we discuss withdrawal, I want you to understand something. This was never about defeating your fleet. This was about showing you that there's another way to think about strength. Zeth's spikes flickered with confusion. I don't understand. You came here believing that advanced technology and superior firepower meant you were stronger than us. But you discovered that humans have a different kind of strength. We don't break when things seem impossible. We adapt. On the Vorthak flagship, Zeth was having the same realization that was spreading throughout the Federation. The humans hadn't defeated them through military superiority. They had defeated them by refusing to accept defeat as permanent. Your species has achieved something unprecedented, Zeth admitted. In 300 years of expansion, we have never encountered resistance that made us stronger instead of weaker. Jake smiled. That's because you were using fear as a weapon. But humans evolved on a world where fear was just information about problems that needed to be solved. Dr. Kevin Stone was listening to the conversation from his position in the Freedom's medical bay. His research over the past 8 months had given him insights that would change how the galaxy understood psychology and evolution. Admiral, request permission to address Commander Zeth directly, he said over the internal communication system. Go ahead, Doctor. Kevin's voice filled both ships. Commander Zeth, I've been studying the differences between human psychology and that of other galactic species. Would you like to know what we discovered? Please proceed, Zeth replied. Every other species you've conquered evolved on worlds that were relatively safe and stable. When they encountered something more powerful than themselves, their survival instinct was to submit and hope for mercy. But humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. Kevin paused to let this sink in. For humans, encountering something more powerful than ourselves isn't a reason to give up. It's a puzzle to solve. We spent millions of years figuring out how to survive against bigger, stronger, faster predators. Facing your technology was just another version of the same challenge. Zeth was quiet for a long moment. Are you saying that your entire species is incapable of accepting defeat? Not incapable, Kevin corrected. We just define defeat differently. To us, defeat only happens when we stop trying to find solutions. As long as we're still learning and adapting, we're still fighting. This conversation was being broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Human crews were nodding in recognition, while alien crews were struggling to understand a completely foreign way of thinking. Captain Lisa, Parker now serving as Earth's chief diplomatic officer, joined the conversation from her station aboard the Freedom. Commander Zeth, there's something else you need to understand. Humans didn't just resist your occupation, we learned from it. Your technology, your tactics, your culture. We studied all of it and found ways to improve upon it. That should have been impossible, Zeth said. Only if you assume that being more advanced automatically makes you superior. But advancement and superiority are different things. You perfected a system that worked for 300 years. But when that system stopped working, you didn't know how to change it. Captain Chris Baker was commanding the Defiance nearby, his entirely human crew operating the modified alien ship with efficiency that still amazed visiting Federation observers. Commander Zeth, this is Captain Baker aboard the Defiance, he said, joining the conversation. I want to show you something. Chris ordered his crew to perform a series of maneuvers that demonstrated the hybrid ship's capabilities. The Defiance moved through space with speed and agility that no pure Vorthak ship could match. Your ship is superior to our original design, Zeth admitted. That's because we approached your technology differently, Chris explained. You built ships to be perfect and permanent. We built them to be adaptable and improvable. When you combine your advanced materials with human engineering, philosophy, you get something better than either could create alone. This was the lesson that was spreading throughout the galaxy. Human resistance hadn't just succeeded on Earth, it had triggered a revolution in how species thought about technology, cooperation, and progress. Director Karen Young's voice came through the communication system from her coordination center on Earth. Commander Zeth, we've been in contact with 43 different species that were under Federation control. They're all using techniques they learned from humans, and they're all achieving better results than they ever did under Federation rule. This cannot be, Zeth said, though his voice lacked conviction. It's already happening. Species that haven't innovated in centuries are suddenly developing new technologies. Worlds that were stagnant under Federation management are becoming more productive and creative. The entire galaxy is changing. Karen was right. The human approach to problem-solving was spreading like a virus throughout the Federation. Species that had accepted their place in the galactic hierarchy for hundreds of years were suddenly asking why things had to stay the same. President Susan Adams joined the conversation from her office in the reconstructed White House. She had been elected 3 months earlier in Earth's first post-invasion election, running on a platform of galactic cooperation. Commander Zeth, humanity would like to make you an offer, she said. Not a surrender demand, but a genuine partnership proposal. What kind of partnership? The Federation has the technology to explore the galaxy safely. Humans have the ability to adapt to new challenges and solve unexpected problems. Together, we could explore regions of space that neither of our species could handle alone. This was a completely new concept for Zeth. The Federation had always expanded through conquest and control. The idea of voluntary cooperation between equals was foreign to their experience. You would share your adaptation techniques with us? We would teach you how to think about problems the way humans do, Susan replied. In exchange, you would share your advanced technology and knowledge of the galaxy. Both species would benefit. Admiral Morrison stepped forward again. Commander Zeth, humanity never wanted to destroy the Federation. We wanted to change it. A galactic civilization based on cooperation and mutual learning instead of domination and fear. Zeth consulted with his officers for several minutes before responding. When he spoke again, his voice carried a tone that no Federation commander had ever used before. Admiral Morrison, the Federation Council has authorized me to accept your partnership proposal. We would like to learn how to think the way humans do. The cheers that erupted from the human ships could be heard even through the vacuum of space. This was victory, but not the kind that left one side defeated and humiliated. Dr. Emma Walsh's voice came through the communication system from her research station. Commander Zeth, I'd like to explain something about human evolution that might help you understand what just happened here. Please proceed, Doctor. Humans didn't evolve to be the strongest or the fastest or the smartest species on our planet. We evolved to be the most adaptable. When we encountered something we couldn't defeat directly, we found ways to work with it, learn from it, or change it into something beneficial. Emma paused. You came here intending to conquer us. Instead, we turned the encounter into an opportunity for both species to grow. That's what humans do. We turn obstacles into opportunities. 6 months later, Captain Lisa Parker stood on the way bridge of the UES Explorer as it prepared for humanity's first joint mission with the Federation. The ship's crew was half human and half Vorthak, working together to investigate a mysterious signal from the galaxy's edge. Captain Parker, this is Science Officer Kenth, came a voice from the ship's laboratory. Kenth was one of the aliens from the Centauri system who had learned human resistance techniques. We're detecting energy patterns that match no known natural phenomena. Could it be another species? Lisa asked. Possibly. But if it is, they're using technology that's completely different from anything in Federation databases.